Hey y'all, welcome back to the Insurance Lounge with me, Tanya.
And me, Kristy.
We are your local insurance agent out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we are here to make insurance a little less boring and way more useful for you. Our goal is to share with you what we know so that you feel more confident about your insurance so that you can better protect your family, your home, your business, and of course, your financial future. So, with that said, Kristy, can you please do the honor and kick us off for the topic of this week?
Sure, Tanya. So today we're going to be professional translators for all things insurance speak, right? Of course, we kind of try to be that all the time anyway, but we want to talk today about your auto insurance optional coverages, what's worth it to have, what's maybe not, and what are the specific situations that make those coverages valuable or not. It's different for everybody, of course.
Yeah, so let's dive into it. We're going to share with you what they are and then also give you some examples so that you can decide for yourself whether or not you have the need for it or you can afford to have that something nice on your policy. So, with that said, let's start with the fundamental of your auto insurance policy. And believe it or not, Kristy, a lot of people are not aware of this, but on your auto policy, there's only one coverage that comes standard with the policy, right, Kristy?
Yep. That's the one that's required by law. That's the liability coverage. That's the only thing that you absolutely have to have.
Absolutely. And liability is the coverage that, because it's required by state law, right? Because that's the coverage that will pay to someone else if you were to hurt them or damage their property in
Right.
the event of an accident, for example. So that way you are protected and you don't get sued.
Exactly. So everything else, like we said, is optional. Keep in mind, optional does not mean unnecessary. It just means you get to choose.
Exactly. And with those optional coverages, we're going to divide them into two camps today. So, like Kristy said, there are some of them that are very essential, which you probably hear a lot about. We'll dive into them a little bit more. These are the ones that we think, even though it's optional, we think every driver should have them, unless you have a very special circumstance. But we'll talk about that too. And then we'll talk about the second camp, which is the nice items to have. These are the
Nice
extra
to have.
stuff. Yep,
Yeah.
the extra stuff that you don't have to have. It's just you want to opt for it if you do have the need for it and you have the budget for it. So
Right.
let's start with the essential extras. Christy, it doesn't
Yeah.
even make sense, but let's start with that.
Uninsured motorist coverage. UIM, you'll hear it referred to as UM. This to me, really, I would not recommend to anybody that they not have uninsured motorist coverage because this is what's going to protect you if someone hits you and they do not have insurance coverage or they do not have enough insurance coverage.
Absolutely. So, is this number varies by state to state, but we know that
Sure.
in our area, right, Christine, statistically, as far as what's being reported, is that the amount of people driving around with zero insurance at all, even though it's not legal, but there are still people, but
There
the number
definitely
fall
are.
between anywhere between 1 in 5 drivers or 1 in 7 driver, depending on what state you're in. Some is a lot more prevalent than others. But what this means to you, like Christy had mentioned, if this person hurt you in that accident, and let's say it's a bad accident, you have to go to the hospital, you have to have surgery, you have to
Yep.
have therapy, right? You might be paying out of pocket for that if you didn't have uninsured motorist. Or if your car is damaged during that accident and the other person doesn't have insurance, you might not have money to fix that car, right? Or you have to pay
Yeah.
out of pocket to fix that car yourself.
Yeah. And that's kind of the big one, right? Because for at least for your own injury, you might have health insurance coverage that would help you cover that. but nothing else is going to help you pay to fix or replace your car if someone hits you and they don't have insurance. So I really consider that almost an essential.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you have to have it? Of course not, right? You can
You
choose
don't,
to
it's
go
not required.
without. Yep, yep, you can choose to go without. But we want you to understand what might comes with it if you choose to not opt for it.
And
Yep.
so the second kind of almost essential coverage is comprehensive and collision, right, Tanya? This is what people will refer to as full coverage. When you hear people say they want full coverage, this is what they're talking about.
Exactly. And just keep in mind, guys, these come separately. They don't have to come together, right, Kristy? So if you see
Right.
collision on your policy and then you have it, that means you hit something. So it could be another car, it could be your neighbor's mailbox, it could be a pole in the parking structure.
Your own garage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you are driving and you hit something, that's your collision coverage. And then on the other hand, if your car is damaged from you not driving, so instead of you hitting a tree, the tree fell and hit your car, that would be something
Mhm.
considered comprehensive. Same thing if your car is damaged by fire, by hail. If you live in an area like we do get hail very often. And the only exception for comprehensive, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but uh, when you're driving and you hit a deer, right? You hit an animal, that will be considered comprehensive.
Kind of considered unavoidable, right? And I've hit a deer before. Believe me, I could not have avoided it. But I
Mhm.
always
Oh,
say the deer hit me.
yeah. Yes, and I think more often than not, the deer do hit you.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
jump at your car. So
And it's a big issue in this area as well. There's a lot of really rural, outlying type of area where it's pretty common to run into deer crossing the
yeah.
road. So comprehensive coverage is what would apply in that sort of situation.
Yep. So make sure you have both or one or the other if that's something that you need. Now, in what scenario, Kristy, would someone really, really, really should have full coverage?
If you still have a loan on your car, absolutely. I mean, as a matter of fact, the lien holder is going to require that you have collision coverage. And even if not, if your car still holds some, is new enough to really still hold some value, I think collision and comprehensive coverage are worth it in that situation because, again, you don't want to have to come out of pocket to replace the vehicle because you didn't carry that coverage. So, the flip side of that coin is when you have an older car, when it really has depreciated and it gets to a point where it's not worth that much anymore, that might be the situation where you start to think about the balance of the premium that you're paying to cover it versus what you're going to get if something happens and the car is totaled. Because at that point, almost any damage is going to mean a total loss for that vehicle. So, at some point, it becomes not really worth paying the premium for comprehensive and collision.
Exactly. So it really depends on how much like you're paying for that coverage too, right, Christy? Because for
Right,
some
right.
people, for a certain vehicle, even if the value is low, it's not going to cost you that much. And if you
Yep.
find yourself in a situation which I have many times throughout my life, is if you don't have the means to put down for a new vehicle, and it doesn't cost you a whole lot to have full coverage, maybe just opt for it. That
Sure.
way, in the event of a total loss in an accident, the insurance company will pay you something, right? Of course, lesser
Right. Even
deductible,
even
but
a
pay
little
you
bit is
something.
is maybe better than nothing, right?
Exactly, just enough to get you into a new car, right? I mean, especially nowadays, we have to drive everywhere, especially driving to work. We don't want you to have to do without a car, and because I don't think the bosses would like that very much. All right, and then so let's move over to camp number two, Christy, which is the extra items.
Yeah, the wish list items, right? The stuff that just makes it easier and smoother to recover in the event of an accident and a claim and a situation where your car has to be in the shop and so forth. So, the first one of those that comes to mind is rental reimbursement, because again, that's going to pay to reimburse you for the cost to rent a vehicle for you to drive while your car's in the shop due to an accident. And what I find is nobody wants this coverage until they need it. And then they're like, why don't I have that? Well, 'cause you said you didn't want it. That's why. So, depending on the level of coverage, typically this is something that you can kind of choose a level of how much reimbursement. So you might be able to get the full cost of a rental car covered, or even just, at least some of it so that your out of pocket is lower in this event.
Yep, absolutely. And in the scenario where you have too many cars and too few drivers, and you could use your spare vehicle if your everyday driver is in a shop from an accident, I would say most certainly you
By
can
all
skip
means, leave
this.
it off. Yeah, exactly. On the flip side of that coin though, if you are driving yourself and three kids around every day to 15 different activities and you don't have an extra car, that's the situation where it's definitely going to be worth it to have that coverage.
Absolutely. And then next on the list, we have something called roadside assistance, or people refer to it as towing, right?
Towing, yeah, yeah.
Now, it also cover a lot more than towing, right, Christy? If my battery
Yeah.
died,
Run
or
out of
you run out of
gas.
gas.
I've done that. Unfortunately, I have done that. And different carriers will call it different things. But and to me, this is one that's really pretty worth it because it's very inexpensive typically. 3, 4, $5 on the entire policy period. No, excuse me, that's not right, per month. um, it's and granted, it's going to typically going to be a reimbursement benefit. You're going to pay for a tow and then get reimbursed, but at least you're not, you have an option to not be stuck on the side of the road.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, if you just make sure too, because some insurance carrier will have this coverage built into the auto policy that you can easily opt for. But most of the time, if you see it like that, it might only follow the car that you purchase it for. So if you have
Sure.
two vehicle and only one of your car has towing, just know that the other car might not have it. And
Hmm.
then on the flip side, we also have insurance companies that give you it, give towing its own policy, standalone by itself, right? So uh, it's very similar to like a AAA roadside membership.
Right,
Right,
right.
Christy? So with those policy, those type of coverage, if it is standing on its own, it might be a little bit more flexible. It might follow you anywhere you go. So whether you're driving your parents' car or your friend's car, your neighbor's car, or you go on vacation and you have a rental car, that
Yeah.
policy might follow you too. But just double check, if you're already paying for a roadside membership somewhere, whether with your insurance carrier or with AAA, uh, don't double pay
You
because
don't want to
you
double pay for sure.
no, you don't
You
want to
know,
do that.
and I talked to a guy yesterday who said, no, no, I don't need it. I keep my cars in tip-top condition. I'm not going to break down on the side of the road. I don't need to spend that money. Fair enough. Okay.
Absolutely. And you know what? Things can change all the time. So at this point of your life, you might feel like you don't need it, but maybe your lifestyle changed. Maybe you have the urge to do longer road trips and drive a
Mhm.
lot further away on your vacations. You might want to add it, right? You can add these things at any time just to give you that peace of mind for when you do need it.
Yep.
Okay, and then what do we have next on our list?
Ride share endorsement.
Oh,
So, this is becoming so much more common. I'm sure that everybody knows somebody who drives for Uber or Lyft or who delivers for DoorDash. People, almost everybody has some sort of side hustle these days, right? And not all of those companies, provide for a full range of coverage, to cover you while you're working that side hustle.
exactly. And in our gig economy, we really want you to be aware of this and understand that if you are participating in any of these transportation network company like Ubers or Lyft, right? There is a gray area, even though these transportation company do provide some sort of insurance. for your car, but just know that it might only cover you when you're actually doing a trip with a customer
Right.
in the car. So during your idle time, or when you're driving around, or when you're waiting for the next call, or when you're on your way to pick up your customer, right,
Yeah.
Kristy? Most people are not aware that that's that gray zone where, unless you are transporting somebody or you're on a task, the transportation insurance is not going to be covering you unless you have let your agent know that you're doing rideshare and you have this endorsement on your policy.
Right, right. So I think it's, a couple of lessons here. It's really important to let your agent know if you are doing this, so that, you can discuss the right coverage. And it's really important to talk with your agent or your carrier and know specifically, is what I am doing covered? Because not all things are created equal. Not all ride shares are the same. Not all delivery options are the same, and all companies do not cover all options. So you really want to be certain that you talk with your specific agent and your specific carrier and make sure that you're covered.
Absolute, Kristy, that's a great tip. Be absolutely transparent with them, guys, because this is one of those very black and white coverage that's on the insurance contract. If you don't have that and you get into an accident while you're on your way to pick up a customer or just drop them off, you're going to get stuck with the repair bill because
Yeah,
your carrier will not pay if you don't have this coverage on there, or if you work for a certain company that falls out of that scope of coverage. So
that's right.
just be very specific and be very honest with your agent, and that way they can guide you properly. Because if they can't offer it, then at least so then you can shop around for the company that does cover you.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
And then speaking of accident, Kristy, this is one of
Yeah.
my most favorite. It is called accident forgiveness. Not all company offer it, but some, a lot do. And make sure you ask about it.
Absolutely. It can really help save your rate. So I really like to offer this type of coverage to people with young drivers where you're not really sure how that's going to work out for you, right? Or maybe even, you yourself, you are accident prone and you've been that way your whole life and your driving record shows it. It might be worth paying a little extra for accident forgiveness.
Absolutely. Or, simply, you live in a multi-generational household and there's a lot of drivers in the household. Because just
Sure.
remember that, right? If you guys are all on one policy together, it only take one driver to get into one accident and everyone's rate's gonna
Everybody's
go
rate
up.
goes up. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. The other opposite that I can argue for too, Kristy, not only people that get into lots of accidents all the time, but we do have some customer that are very careful that really hardly ever get into an accident, right? But then in the 30, 40 years you drive and you get into that one accident,
Yeah,
guess what, guys? Know that that one accident does affect your rate, even if you have been a very good driver in the last 20, 30, 40 years. So
yeah.
that's kind of stinks a little bit. So I know that with our customers that are great drivers like that, a lot of time they still opt for that coverage because
Sure.
they want to protect their rate that they have.
Yep. Everybody, it's like we said in the beginning, everybody has a different situation, a different scenario, and everybody has a different sort of appetite for risk and for, paying ahead of time versus paying on the back end. That's really what it kind of comes down to when you're considering these optional coverages. Am I going to pay for it up front or am I going to pay for it in the event of an accident? So, you know how to make the decision about how you would prefer to handle that.
Absolutely. So the big picture, just a quick recap for our audience today, because we did talk a lot about many different items on an auto policy. So the
Yeah.
first thing we talked about was your liability. It is absolutely required. It comes with every policy. You cannot not want to have it on there. It's just built
Right.
into it. And then we
And
talked
then
about also.
Yeah, the two different camps of the optional coverages, kind of the trio of essentials there that we talked about in the beginning, uninsured motorist, comp and collision. These are kind of, they are optional, but we highly recommend them, especially in specific scenarios.
Absolutely. And then we talked about the rest of the fun stuff that can be added on if you have the need for it or if you have the budget for it.
Yeah, the nice to haves.
The nice to have. So with that said, we hope that you find today's episode very helpful and that is going to make things a little bit easier on you the next time you set up your insurance policy or you have a policy review with your agent and that way take this information, decide for yourself what's going to be best for you when you do need to use your insurance policy because at the end of the day, that's what they're for.
That's what it's for. And if you don't have an agent who will go through a review with you and talk to you about these coverages, then you're welcome to call either Tanya or me.
Absolutely. So if you find it helpful today, hit the like button, share with a friend, and drop a comment. Let us know how we're doing, or if there's anything about insurance that you would want to know more about. I promise we will read the comments and we'll put something together for you.
You got it.
And so until next time, guys, we'll see ya.
Bye bye.